All right, so today we are going to start off with the temperate rainforest. And as we said on the first slide that I'll have to go back to, that the temperate rainforest is similar to the tropical rainforest, but obviously very different as well because it has a completely different name. Tropical, as we talked to Ashley about, she told us that that means that a place is going to be hot and humid. Temperate means that it is cool year round. We looked at the globe. We looked at the middle of the globe that kind of divides the earth in half, and we said that's the equator. And then I think Ava and some other folks told me that it is very hot at the equator, and they are correct. The further away you go, north or south from the equator, if you're at the equator and you start to go south, if you're at the equator and you start to go north, the further away that you get, the cooler it gets. And because the temperate rainforests are found in the upper mid-latitudes, it is a lot cooler there on average, which is what we see right here. Now, the last part of the name of temperate rainforest is the exact same as tropical rainforest, so we know that this place is going to get a lot of rain. Up to 200 inches of rain. That's nowhere near the 400 inches of rain that the tropical rainforests are getting, but 200 inches of rain a year is a lot of rain, especially if you're getting a decent portion of that, not a lot of it, but a good portion of that just from the fog that's moving through. We talked about how the fog moves through. It sticks to the leaves, it sticks to the mosses and the ferns that are around, and that drips to the ground, and you get a decent amount of precipitation, like measurable precipitation, from the fog that moves through. Because there is so much rain, unlike the deserts, unlike the tundra, you're going to be able to support a lot of tree life because there is so much rain. Along with the trees, you're going to have ferns and moss. And I do think, if I'm not mistaken, Noah, that you'll have to know that ferns grow there as well, and that ferns can also be found near rivers and bodies of water where there isn't access to a lot of water, because those are plants that have adapted to using a lot of water. Some of the animals, definitely not all of them, but some of them that you can see will be an eagle. I don't know what an Islay bear is. An eagle, a black bear, or a grizzly bear. You could see both, I guess. Mountain lions, timber wolves. We saw those banana slugs. You can see bats that are there. Obviously, that is not a full extensive list, but you should be able to, on the test, when they give you a list of animals, they're not going to give you rare, obscure animals. You should know where they're getting those animals from. And if you don't know, then I would start looking, Evan, at the abiotic factors. What's the weather like? What's the climate? How much rain does it get? What's the soil like? Because those things can also tell me what biome that I might happen to be in. I know we're writing these down. I am just going to take a quick break and go backwards through this for the folks that are at home. Deserts are next. We talked about the banana slugs, how they look like a banana and how they have crazy adaptations in order to live in that forest as well, which is something that's very important. Lots of moss, right? It's in our notes that there's lots of moss. And one of the most important animals here, and it's going to be that keystone animal. Who remembers what keystone means? Brantley. Probably the most important animal there is the elk. Now, the elk are huge. If you've never seen an elk, that's a sight to see. As they stomp and tromp through the woods, they knock a lot of those underbrush things over, and they also eat a lot. That keeps the forest just enough cleaned out so that it doesn't become overgrown and start killing off things. And I think the elk are extremely important. All of those dead trees are broken down by many, many, many different types of decomposers. So there is a lot of nutrients in the soil there, which is kind of obvious if you're growing that many plants in one spot. Again, about 200 inches of rain, 7 to 12 inches. 12 inches of quote-unquote rain, but 12 inches from just the fog is wild to me. Again, a lot cooler temperatures than the tropical rainforest. And the one that we need to really worry about, they're not going to ask you about the ones in Chile and United Kingdom or Norway or Japan. They're going to ask you about the ones like the Hoh rainforest in the upper parts of America, and then like some of the temperate rainforest that makes its way into Canada and some of Alaska as well. I'll go back to the anchor chart for the folks at home. I'll hit pause on my recording and pick back up when we do the next one for deserts. All right, the next thing that we're going to study, and this might be the last ecosystem that we get to today, is the desert. One of the things that I realized last night, Jackson, as I was going through and looking at the different definitions of things, they defined a desert as any place that gets less than 10 inches of rain. That is why the tundra is also a desert. There are more than just sand deserts. There are salt flats, there are mountainous deserts, there are Arctic deserts that we will talk about here in just a little bit, or they might call them the polar deserts. There are more than ones. The ones that we will focus on the most, Brittany, are going to be the ones that you think of when I say the desert. Sand, hot, cactuses, snakes, scorpions, and those types of things. That's the one we're going to look at. We can't memorize every kind of desert. It's not going to ask you how much rain each one gets. It's not going to say above 10 or below 10. That's just so you know, if you only get 10 inches of rain, that's not a lot in a whole year, you would be considered a desert. It says here Antarctica is the largest desert in the world, but that's the tundra. But it's also a desert. What we would think of is the Sahara as far as the hot deserts go. We have 4 major hot, dry deserts in America: the Mojave, the Great Basin, and there's others in other places as well. But you don't have to memorize the names of the deserts. It's not going to be on there. If you know that the desert is hot and dry, you're probably well on your way to answering the questions that we'll have to talk about as we go through. The seasons in the desert are hot. During the summer, it's warm. During the summer, it's hot and it's warm during the rest of the year. I think it's just hot all the time. When it does rain, because it's so hot, Ava, sometimes the rain hits the sand and evaporates immediately. So some of the plants, like the cactus, have very shallow roots. Not deep roots that dig into the ground like a tree, shallow roots that are reaching as far out as they can so that they can collect any rain that falls as quickly as possible. Because it doesn't rain a lot in most deserts. The Atacama Desert, it only rains 1 millimeter every 5 to 20 years. I don't know if you've looked at a millimeter on a ruler in the last little bit. That is not a lot of rain. That is a very tiny, small amount of rain. Desert plants. Obviously, we think about the cactus. The cactus has evolved to stand the weather. It has that waxy coating on the outside so that it does not, girls, lose any water through it like some other plants do in the process of transpiration. Cactus are able to store water for a long time and use those stores during those drier parts of the season as well. But again, with those shallow roots so they can absorb any water that does happen to fall. Desert animals. A lot of desert animals are cold-blooded. What does that mean? We talked about it the other day. Nope. Yes, they take on the temperature of their surroundings. Can these animals hang out in the middle of the desert during the day, as hot as it is? No, it would kill them. So when do they come out? What do we call animals that come out at night? Nocturnal animals. And that's what they are. And that's what they do because that's the way to survive. Some of them have adapted to not getting a lot of water, like this kit fox, or the fennec fox in the background. They get most of the liquids that they need in their diet from the juices and the bugs that they chomp, which is kind of gross to think about right before lunch, right? No drink today. No milk. We're just going to give you a bunch of bugs for you to chomp on, and hopefully you get some juices out of those and you can swallow it. See, yeah, it's kind of gross. Again, talk about that. Can't watch that, and I'm going to pause here. All right, so here are your notes about the desert. Places are called a desert if they get less than 10 inches of rain a year. There are many kinds of deserts: polar deserts, mountainous deserts, deserts with dunes. Not all deserts are just sand. Most of the ones that we study will be. The temperature, it can be hot or cold. Listen, you don't really need to write this down. I'll just take this off. But in hot deserts, you can get well over 100 during the day and so cold at night that you need like a jacket or a sleeping bag or something. And I have to go take this phone call because the insurance people about my elbow are calling. So I want to pause. All right, so I don't know exactly where I stopped, but I'll come back here at the temperature. It can be hot. And I'll be honest with you, like if I was doing one of these podcasts, like it would very much interest me, like why in the world can it be so hot that you can barely survive during the day, but so cold in the desert at night? How does it change so quickly would be an interesting podcast to me. Cactus and other plants have adapted to live there by storing water and not getting rid of water. You have the fennec fox, snakes, birds, scorpions. You don't have to memorize everything. And deserts are arid. I have seen that word arid show up before, and that means that they lose most of their water through evaporation before they can even get anything stored in the ground or anywhere else. They lose more water through evaporation than they get in rain. So it's like you're losing water. It may have rained 6 inches, but 7 inches of water has evaporated is kind of what that's saying. So I'll wrap that up for the folks at home, put this on the Google Classroom for anybody that happens to need it later on. They can click like and subscribe, and that would be awesome. And moving on.